And we are live.
Hello, Amman.
Hello. Greetings and salutations, people of the world. This is not an emergency broadcast this time. This is actually going to be a pretty chill night. We are here with several guests in our new gracious host department, at least for tonight. The spooky, scary skeleton man of Dylan. He's very important to this endeavor right now.
It's very cool.
Skeletons have always been important to me, and you came along right when we needed you. So thank you again, Skeleton Man.
Thank you for supporting my
Your bones rattling away which horrifies souls and rends them immobilized.
It's very touching.
I don't think anyone's ever said anything kinder. That's the kindest thing I think
I guess you could say it's
So, welcome to Hidden Knowledge of Modern Times. It's October 26th, which means it's the last weekend before Halloween.
It is, yes, indeed. We're going to get dark tonight. We're going to talk about the darkest parts of people's psychology.
It's going to get real spooky.
Oh,
so,
I don't know if I can handle this.
We
should introduce our people.
Yes.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead? We're here with a live studio audience.
Oh, yes.
We are in spooky Skeleton Man's domain, and
We got our...
it is suitably spooky.
Well, we are your hosts. I'm Amman, the forgotten and generally not very important guy. We have Samael, the fallen angel. He's not quite fired, but
Yes. We also have our studio audience.
It's a sensitive subject. I really don't want to get into it. I was a former angel. I have a lot of experience, and that's all that.
Say former.
Yeah, we can leave it at that. Yeah, we can say former. It's fine. Let's talk about our studio audience.
Yes.
We also have our tech man, Rem.
Not yet, Rem. Hold on.
The shapeshifter.
Hit the Rem cam.
Where's the Rem?
That Rem cam.
the rim job.
I've heard that before for sure.
You're not lying anymore.
So we have Rem right here. Here, let me get my nameplate. I am a shapeshifter. You guys already know. I doubt you guys are skipping to episodes.
You've been on a couple of episodes.
Oh yeah.
You've been around the block.
A little bit, yeah, just a tad. All right, and as well, we also have our beanbag cam.
Yes, on it we have Steve, the normal human, and Jon, the carpenter.
No, we're a big carpenter. I guess I'm a werewolf.
You're a werewolf?
I'm a werewolf.
All right. Well, I guess that's just your day job.
Wait, did you say you're a werewolf?
Yeah.
Or you're a werewolf?
So, Stephen,
I was part of the conversation.
Stephen, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Stephen the Mortal. I'm back after a 2-week hiatus.
That's fine, no big deal. You have mortal things going on, I understand.
Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, you do have that yours.
We also have Jon.
Jon, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Jon. I'm a werewolf.
Dope.
Are you aware that you're a werewolf?
No, I just found out that I was a wolf.
Oh, so how are you taking that?
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I imagine it would be pretty badass.
Yeah, I like to sleep, and
It's a pretty wolf thing.
and then I wake up.
I mean, it's a pretty regular thing. Like, it's a pretty regular gig.
I
Right?
see.
Like, 29 days, you do whatever you want, and then you trade it off.
Yeah,
That's true. That's true.
So,
Are you aware while you're a werewolf?
we've been there.
He's aware that he is a werewolf, but is he aware while he's a werewolf?
Wait just a second.
No, not at all. You just
Where
have
were you while
I'm trying to
you
clarify.
were aware that you were
Also-
a werewolf? I was at home.
Are we creating we have another camera to get to.
Yes. Over there. All right. We also have our studio audience over here. We have Joseph, the Triton.
My name is Triton.
Oh, sorry, Triton. My fault.
Yes,
Let's try it with the captain.
Siren.
Sorry.
Like the gum?
What?
Like the gum?
No, like a male siren. It's a creature.
No, not Trident. Trident layers. No.
Triton.
Oh, gotcha.
And I heard about this podcast on the
Like it's the
way.
dirtiest knots.
Nice.
Some submarine sonar. No.
We also actually broadcast this podcast through waterways as well as airwaves.
Yes, it is in the ocean. And in fact, that was our primary platform before we took it to land.
Yeah.
Fun fact for you guys, actually.
Yeah.
You know, the temples at the bottom of the Pacific. That's where we started.
Yeah. The
I've
deep
been a
ones.
long time listener.
I really appreciate that. You know, the deep ones are our primary audience, and they don't really give a lot of good feedback. The comment section is just terrible. They just screech and belch, and it's
Well, it's
really...
hard to get a signal back being so far away.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a
All
language
those strange
barrier.
rounds, man.
The Atlanteans don't really like our show.
Yeah,
I don't know.
they're too uptight.
Yeah, they don't feel like we're appropriate enough for their culture.
They're so prestigious.
I know, yeah, they're real regal.
Who do we have in the middle there?
So,
We have Ephraim, the Mushroom King.
No, I don't think we. No, Ephraim's not here tonight. Oh, it's a different guy. We actually have Peter Parker.
This is Peter Parker.
Emo, Peter Parker.
Oh man, Ooh, I can see it.
All right.
Do the dance.
Don't shoot, it's too small.
Peter Parker got moves.
There we go.
that's a suitable introduction, I'd say.
That's one of the best ones I've seen, honestly. I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed that I'm forgetting the fact that you're actually a douchebag.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
So,
Continue to clap.
our last and most gracious host
Yep.
is the Spooky Skeleton Man.
Oh yeah. Hello, hello.
A long legend.
Yes, yes.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
You know, the legends in the bones, man.
The Legend 27.
We all know the bones, right?
Did the bones tell you about this forecast?
You know, they got a little chilly. My bones told me I need to be here right now. It's been good, man. It's been good.
It's the osteo sensation.
Here in my lair.
Yeah, I'm sure you wander a lot though.
Yeah, I do. Mostly outside my lair, not a lot in it.
Yeah.
I haven't tried wandering in my lair. I might find some things that I didn't know were here.
Right? Yeah. Do you know what's behind that door?
No, I do not.
You don't want to know.
Dare I not question it? It's a very dark door. Don't think about it.
Enter the scary door.
The door's telepathic. It'll like enter your mind and you'll see things you wish you didn't. And it's quite a horrifying experience. It's like equivalent to that of living through hell.
Oh man.
I don't recommend it.
Yeah, Dylan was talking about.
I'm letting the door enter my mind.
That separates
It's horrifying.
one from the other.
Honestly.
And it is that door. That door is the filter of the mind.
I'm going through the 9 layers of hell in my mind just looking at that door.
It's actually telepathically influencing you to look in there. And when you do, you will realize that your hell is just a room.
Wow, that's really dark.
Yeah.
That is really dark.
That might be a little too dark.
That is entering the dark part of people's psychology.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, speaking of which, I think tonight's episode is about dark psychology.
It is. We have topics.
Now you're getting to see. Yeah, get into some.
I mean, seriously, how's dark?
Perfect segue.
Totally. While I'm there. Oh, thank you. I trained to do that. So, what is our first topic, Amman, within the realm of dark psychology?
Our first topic is going to be shadow work. That's where you delve deep into your own mind and reach the deepest parts of your subconscious that you don't really like to visit. And you kind of bring them out and
Address them, right?
address them, right?
Yeah, you take the shadows of yourself and then you rein them in.
What's the point?
What's the point?
What's the point?
What's the point of shadow work?
Why do shadow work?
It seems like to me it's
It sounds terrifying. Right?
personal development.
Exactly.
Self-reflection.
Yes, exactly. Taking the darker parts of yourself and working with them to accept them and move past them. That way you end up to be the person that you want to be. We actually have an expert on shadow work here.
We do,
We'd like to consult. Stephen, you've been doing a lot of shadow work, have you not?
Yes. This normal human has a lot of things going on in the darkest parts of the psyche.
Yeah, humans have a lot of dark things going on in their thoughts, right?
Yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What do you do with your shadow work?
So, what I like to do, because in my past history, without thinking about it, like I have self-sabotaging thoughts, and I act on those thoughts, and they really sabotage, my, professional and personal growth. And so I've learned to meditate on, these dark thoughts, and how to overcome these dark thoughts, or how to work with them. Basically, how to use the what's the best way I can describe this? How to use these barriers in my life to grow. And so I use these barriers and I set them as boundaries, with myself and with other people. And that's really how lately, my first successful shadow work was this past July. And I always seem to do shadow work during a Mercury retrograde. It's very weird. I don't know why, but I always seem to do shadow work during retrograde. And as I realized that, this shadow work that I'm doing right now on the retro shade of the last Mercury retrograde of 2019. I'm doing it as I'm reflecting on my self-sabotaging thoughts and this past decade. And it's very interesting that this retrograde starts on Halloween and officially ends on December 7th.
What is a retrograde?
So a retrograde.
That's what I'm wondering.
Huh?
That's what I'm wondering too.
Okay, so a retrograde, it's when so in the past, people will look up and it looks like, the planets are going backwards, which is not the case. Like, if planets actually went, the opposite way of the way they're going, it would mess everything up. But it just, during the changing of seasons, the pattern in the skies look like they changed directions. And so that's a retrograde. And there's many different type of retrogrades, but the retrograde that that's very popular is a Mercury retrograde.
I hear about that one the most.
Exactly, everyone hears about it.
It's almost
the astrological concept.
Yeah, I agree.
Astronomical concept of what a retrograde is, but what does that mean for the people here on?
So what that means for the people, and that's actually a very interesting question. So what that means, what it means personally, it could just be coincidence, but especially with the Mercury retrograde, it seems like it's a miscommunication with a lot of things. A lot of times, things get miscommunicated during the Mercury retrograde. No, everyone doesn't subscribe to it. A retrograde actually does not control anything. We control our own selves. So when you look at astrology and zodiac, I look at it for guidelines and a learning experience.
Yeah, I mean, I was necessarily asking, you said, you were talking about the retrograde as if it had some sort of effect here on Earth, and you were explaining, that there are different kinds of retrograde. What exactly does it mean for...
So with the Mercury retrograde, if we wanted to, get scientific, because, Mercury is, a planet made of iron,
Yeah.
It does really affect our technology.
Right. I'm more looking at the psychological.
Okay, so the psychological, that's very subjective. I subscribe, to the zodiac and astrology. That's, a practice I subscribe to. So when a Mercury retrograde does happen, I guess I can say I'm very cautious of, my decision making, and, I look at it like, okay, what am I going to do, and how is this going to affect, the next month?
Right, but you brought it up in relations to doing shadow work, which is a psychological effect.
So
how is this affecting your shadow work?
Okay, so that's perfect. So with this Mercury retrograde, like I said, Mercury retrogrades are, in popular culture, dark times.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually take the time to do shadow work during something that's
when the bad times happen.
Exactly.
So essentially you're saying, you would say, like, in a psychological sense, the retrograde is a time of negative influence, like when negative things are going on in the world.
Yeah, and not necessarily negative, but when things, aren't, finally.
They're volatile, right?
Right? So, yeah, negative things do happen during a Mercury retrograde. Technology, gets kind of weird. Like at work this past week, like everything that could go wrong, with our systems went wrong.
Yeah.
So I usually take this time to, reflect on, my personal self, and both like before and after a retrograde, there's, 2 weeks before and after, I get kind of, aggy, like angsty.
So when you look at, like, when a retrograde is happening, you're more paying attention to the things that are going on into your environment than
Exactly.
So you're using, like, retrograde as a concept to define a time of, like, common psychology going on. And
Exactly.
Not necessarily something being influenced by the stars.
Right. Yeah. So, like I said, like people, they say, oh, the stars influence us, blah blah. That might be true up to a certain point, as far as like everything works with each other, but at the same time, like we make our own decisions. We pioneer our own path.
I'm not necessarily denying the idea that the stars and planets could affect us here on Earth. I was trying to more like break down the concept of like why you were bringing up astrology to begin with and how astrology psychologically relates to your thinking.
Yeah, and this is why, like, I wish I was a really good speaker and I could articulate, my thoughts. But so, and going back to, basically what you're asking, I personally use this time because me personally, I usually get self-sabotaging around, a Mercury retrograde before and after. Like, I get moody. So I take this time to, meditate and reflect on, why am I feeling this way? What in the past has, led me up to this point to where, like, I have to self-sabotage and, throw away everything I've worked for.
Right.
What are some examples of self-sabotage?
Okay, perfect example. Well, not perfect example, but some example. Oh, sorry.
What is the perfect example? No, just
Even
yeah.
as a modern human life.
example.
Yeah, so, okay, the perfect example. I always seem to be, like, doing good. Last weekend, seemed to be doing, like, really good with, like, this person, I was talking to. And then all of a sudden, I say a few key things and she thinks I'm suicidal, And so it's just stuff I normally wouldn't say, but, like, in conversation, it slipped out.
It happens though.
Yeah, it does
You're
happen.
saying it's a time of misinterpretation.
Exactly. It is a time.
Things are a little off.
Everything that can go wrong
It's like
will.
when people around you don't, like, you have one intention of what you're trying to say, but people around you aren't understanding your true intention.
Exactly.
Oh,
And
it's
I'm wrong with that all my
sometimes
life.
coincidence, of course.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that this last retrograde, this last Mercury retrograde, is, at the end of a decade. Like, it ends on December 7th. Like, after the retrograde, like, it ends on December 7th. It's the end of a decade.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you think that demonic possession occurs more during a retrograde?
I think maybe. I think we're more prone to it during a Mercury retrograde.
You think so?
Yeah, I think the doors are open, especially during, like, the fall and winter seasons, especially during fall. I mean, it's no coincidence that this retrograde starts on Halloween.
So sorry, I don't mean to really hog the mic here. But as we're sitting here talking about all these astrological concepts, astrology relates to more like spiritual concepts, stuff like that. I wanted to bring up an important concept about psychology and its relation to spirituality because something that's come up I've seen on BBC, New York Times headlines, stuff like that is like psychologists are starting to look more toward spirituality because they're starting to get more clients that are coming to them with spiritual perspectives. And I want to talk a little bit about the relationship between these spiritual concepts and the psychology of the human mind. Is like
Yeah, no, I think tarot card readers are definitely just therapists with a gimmick.
That's it.
I agree.
I mean,
Yeah,
ignoring the idea that there's power behind the cards, which there could be.
If we're performing introspection on ourselves as a society, which if not only does the massive motion, a retrograde is actually us and Mercury revolve at different speeds, and it revolves faster. So this is a time when we overtake Mercury, which is why it causes it to go in the other direction. So if we're overpowering this planet for a moment, and it's made out of iron and it's directly in front of our sun, then it makes sense that there would be some kind of electromagnetic effect, however minor, that could influence or interfere with our attempts to communicate.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying, like, you know,
in the general field of electromagnetic.
Well, we acknowledge, we even have a word for the moon affecting our behaviors and mannerisms and everything. Yeah, you're a lunatic, right? The moon affects our behaviors because the moon is so close in
so
gravitation.
it's essentially a
Acknowledge.
form of tidal energy.
Well, I have a few kind of different concepts on it. Like, imagine all the planets in the universe, like, each one has a magnetic field on it, right? So they're all spinning around each other really, really fast. But what happens when you take two magnets and you spin them around each other really fast? Is you get an electrical generator, because the rotation of the magnets creates an electrical discharge. And it's like the sun, it's like our plants consume energy from the sun, we consume the plants. It's like, in some way, like the star is still applying energy, like down here on Earth, that we are consuming. So in some way, shape or form, some tiny minuscule way, there are ways that the planets really do affect life down here on Earth.
And what's so crazy is in 2019 was a very, and it's funny you're talking about, supercharging. 2019 was a very supercharging year, and I think it was to get us ready for this next decade. Because
I've been worried. Oh wow, that's a way to look at it.
Yeah, 2020, like that's the start of a new decade, and it's very interesting that at the highest peak of retrogrades, we went through 5 retrogrades at once. Like 4 or 5. Yeah, we went, and it was Pluto, Jupiter. Yeah, 5. It was Pluto, Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn, and Mercury.
With the
all at once. And retrogrades aren't necessarily a bad thing. Like, especially, like Saturn.
It's volatile.
Like Saturn, was in retrograde, for the majority of this year.
So in the philosophies and spiritualities of astrology, each individual planet has a relationship to some kind of psychological effect, mood, emotion, or really archetype. So when you're seeing like a retrograde, like a Mercury retrograde has a different effect of a Saturn retrograde, and I think they can be better understood that because we understand the concept of what a retrograde is doing psychologically, what's the difference between now a Mercury and a Saturn retrograde?
So, it all depends. Okay, so if you go deeper into astrology, it's like, right now Mercury is in retrograde in Scorpio.
Yeah.
And like it's, Scorpio is very commonly equated to, hiding, like pushing your thoughts and emotions away and down. And during, a retrograde, things usually come to light during a retrograde, like a Mercury retrograde anyway. Now with a Saturn retrograde, especially in Capricorn, it's a very like prosperous time, for finances, companies, and all that. And if we look, at this year, it's been pretty, like as far as like companies and profits, it's been pretty good. This has been a pretty good year, as far as like people's creativity. And like, I mean, look at what
I can't deny that. Like, I felt this year was pretty prosperous, despite like I think a lot of bad things happened.
Yes, a lot of
bad things.
for sure.
Even through all the bad things, I think there was a lot of productivity.
Yeah, absolutely.
This year has
I mean, look
been.
at where we're at right now. Look at what we're doing right now. Like us in the room. Look at what we're doing right now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I was actually talking earlier today. It's insane how many more enlightened people are starting to bloom in the world around us. Because like before I was enlightened, it's like I know I couldn't really notice the enlightened people not being enlightened, but you look around and it's like there are just so many of them, and I feel like there's just more than
like is natural.
Yeah.
Maybe this is natural.
Yeah, that's the perfect word for it, natural. Like when you're
Yeah,
not
it could be
in that mind, like
confirmation
everything,
bias, because you know
it seems like you're struggling to get what you need. Now, when you get to that point, it's you understand, yeah, there is a struggle and you got to work for it. But when you get to that point, you understand everything has a flow. Everything, has its own energy. And when you get to, and like I was talking to somebody, once you understand those patterns, you can form your own reality.
Yeah. I mean, that's essentially what the path of enlightenment is understanding the system of the world around you and
Do you think
understanding
it's
the patterns.
dangerous to be enlightened?
So if I can
Like,
form my
how
own
dangerous is it to be extremely
I
self-aware?
wouldn't necessarily say
And to know,
it's
like-
dangerous, because danger is really a matter, like, what is danger really? Is it that you're afraid of your life? Are you afraid of your sanity? Like, danger is what you define it as a sense of...
Yeah, I mean, there's like that statistic.
Hold on. I have a question. Do you think that during the process of enlightenment that you can go down a dark path instead of a path of illumination?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this earlier, actually. He was denying this because of like an argument that we were having on essentially how the concept of thinking of goodness in a certain way influences perception in a certain way.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah, what do you define as
So
good?
if I can define my own reality, then I can also perceive what my reality has in contrast with everyone else's. And that gives me insight that I can use as feedback. And if I can perceive beyond the other people in the environment, then you see it's sort of
You have control over the environment.
Right.
So, well, I was talking earlier, you mentioned that you asked, like, is it dangerous to be enlightened? And truth be told, the way
Yeah, I mean, there's that whole statistic
I don't
about
necessarily
like,
think it's dangerous. I think the
intelligent people are
the price of enlightenment is the ignorance of a simple life. So in order for you to be enlightened, you are giving up the simple, ignorant life of just being and living with the world the way that it is.
Right.
At any given time, any of us
never
can
gonna be satisfied with
choose
nothing.
the perception to just be satisfied with what is in front of us and not chase something more. We're enlightened because in some way everyone here, I suppose, would have wanted to chase something more, or have a reason to even question the reality around them because they weren't satisfied with the reality that was before them. So you're looking at, so the quest that sends you into philosophy is the search of happiness, right? The search to evolve, the search to grow, to understand.
Yeah, that's how a lot of people start.
It's how a lot of people get into philosophy. That's how Socrates started philosophy too, with the question, how do I live a happy life? And
That's a really great
I think,
question.
like, that's
Yeah,
why
that's why I really like the
enlightened,
Stoics.
I think that's why, like, most enlightened people aren't necessarily bad people, they're good people because they got into this path searching for what will make them happy in this life.
Yeah, I think they're so.
Although, that can take you down a dark path of like
It can.
hedonism
They see.
and, taking advantage of people and, like that kind of thing where like you realize that you're most happy when you have like pure control and like
It's-
get into
it's-
that dark mode.
It's a lot of responsibility having control over your environment, and you have to understand, like, when you're controlling people around you by controlling your environment, and you're using people as game pieces, as what's the word, benign, whatever, however you want to look at that.
That's a good metaphor.
But it's like, you have to understand, it's like, you are responsible for the people that you are manipulating. It's okay to, like, help people and stuff like that, but, like, you can hurt someone on accident and not realize that you were about to hurt them, and that can really mess up your perception, and that, I think, can lead you down a dark path.
I think that's 100% correct. Like with what happened to me last week, and I had to meditate on this. Like this whole week was a very odd week for me because like with what happened to me last week. Quick recap: some crazy woman tried to have me make her active because she thought I was suicidal.
That's fun.
Yeah,
That's a good time.
Yeah, right. But and that I felt betrayed. Like I felt very animalistic, as far as
Instinctual. Like
exactly. I wanted to like get her attention, but at the same time I wanted to lash out. So I had to tell myself like, you know what, like this isn't for me. I felt betrayed, and we see this, like when animals feel betrayed, they want attention, but when they get that attention, they don't know how to act, and then they lash out.
Yeah.
And I did a tarot reading on that, and it's exactly, what it was talking about. I want to say the Nine of Pentacles.
Yeah.
I forgot what card, but I pulled it 2 times in like 2 different readings, and like it was reversed, and it was talking about like animalistic, self-sabotaging,
When your ego takes control.
basically when your instincts, when you're when you throw all,
It's like that moment of vulnerability allows you a choice.
Emotion, like,
you either allow that vulnerability to destroy you, or you allow it to help you grow.
Yeah,
it's entirely up to you.
and that's exactly what I was doing, like the shadow work, like how I started doing the shadow work in the first place, because I've let, in these times, like I've let my mood, I've let my emotions sabotage, what I work, like, to make friends, or, to get somewhere at work, I would get moody, I'd feel some type of way, I wouldn't communicate, and I would let my emotions take over. And so, like this time, like, with the shadow work that I've been doing, like, I've been reflecting, like, okay, like, how can I communicate more? How can I use, like, not just lash out? And, I'm getting better, like, as far as communicating.
I feel like the more you're aware of it, like, I think a lot of times there are people who are trying to grow and they're trying to get better, and a lot of times like their environment will have them will have them develop through a messed up situation, and they're still learning and growing, and sometimes like those people will do things that hurt people, but that wasn't their intention to hurt people, but it's often like...
And that's exactly what I did on accident last weekend.
I would like to pitch you guys a topic to discuss. Now that we're kind of moving into awareness of the self and the consequences of our moral action, I would like to hear your opinion about the idea of black magic and what the morality behind it is.
Okay, I want you...
Yeah, Joseph,
before we get in, can you really define what you mean by black magic? Because my interpretation of black magic is actually relating to Egyptian which
black magic would be harmful magic. Things that you do to other people that have a negative consequence.
And it's a general concept, not a specific concept like that.
Is it always through intent to gain for the self?
No, I wouldn't say so.
So just hurting someone in general, whether it be for personal gain or just to hurt. So like
black magic is generally considered to be like curses and hexes and anything that affects other people.
Okay.
So Joseph, what would you like to say on that?
I would like to say that if you're trying to learn how to perform black magic, we want to look at how to perform black magic with skill, because black magic can be useful, but you still have to care about the person that you're using the magic on. So where we mess up is by using something that we're not skillful in using. So we need to turn our attention back to what does make us skillful. Humans, their emotions get attached to objects. That's called psychic affect. And we have this subconscious need to unravel all of our emotions about everything and print them onto the world. So when we collectively decide to take negative emotions and we see this calendar in the sky and we just choose, it allows us to reflect on ourselves. We take this negative energy and we decide where to put it. We're doing that on a social level in some way. So with the person who first came out with the zodiac astrology sign, there are multiple, but the people that started to follow them realized that it was a useful method to organize themselves. So it may be relevant that Mercury is made out of iron, but Mercury might be made out of iron because we chose it, like we attributed it this emotion before we knew what it was made out of. So one precedes the other. And when you're aware of how your emotional use in the world affects you and other people, then you can make a decision about how you want to use it. But I think really being able to use it means understanding how to use it well. And if you have the choice between well and not, then you will use it well.
I think so too. Nobody wants to use something where it's going to fizzle out as soon as it leaves their whale or space.
Yeah.
I totally agree. But I think you made a really interesting point about there's negative energy no matter what. So now we're just deciding where to use it, where it should go. Instead of us or somebody else, we think that the negative energy of the universe should come down and go to this or that person.
So, this actually kind of, to me, is starting to lean towards ethics a little bit. It's like,
Exactly.
why use black magic? I was reading The Republic recently by Plato, and something that he was talking about, and one of the arguments that they were presenting was talking about, like, why be a moral person? Like, there was, one of the people in the argument had the concept that if you, like, someone who goes around being moral all the time and doing good things for, like, all the time is also subjective to doing good things to bad people, and bad people can take advantage of that. So what the argument had come to is that what morality really is to deliver evil to those who deliver evil and deliver good to those who deliver good.
I like that.
Yeah.
So my opinion on black magic is if it's necessary, use it. If it's not,
Then don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
like it's as simple as that. Ask yourself, I'm doing something to harm someone. Does this person really deserve this?
Yeah, I think that's the big question.
Yeah.
I prefer to use black magic passively at all times so that I can be a consistent judge of character.
Why? So
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I'm curious.
What's the function of the use of black magic?
So, like, there is a sense, like, there's a lot of stories you'll hear about, like, witches that'll cast curses on people, but
Right.
the curses are usually casted on people because in some way someone wronged that witch who did the curse on them. The witch, usually the solution to lifting that curse is to figure out the lesson behind why you were cursed to begin with.
So if I'm
Yeah.
creating a curse, it doesn't have to be a curse, it could be something good, but if I'm creating something around somebody else, they're actually inside the environment where they're going to be possessed by this energy.
Yeah.
So whatever energy I'm using to create, but there's something about the balance between positive energy and negative energy that allows the negative energy to be a really good tool. And you just have to understand how to apply it delicately, and it's how you shape the positive energy around other people so that you can deliver it to them.
I think essentially if you're doing something out of care, the good intent of the person, and you're caring enough about the well-being of that person, I don't necessarily think that, like, the negative, I think in that case, the negative energy would be always used in a positive sense. Like,
Well, if you're teaching somebody a lesson, the negative energy is used to produce a positive intent for that person. They grow, they learn.
So if I were to instead create a mirror image of negative energy inside myself, I'd create sort of like a vacuum for positive energy to enter. So if I can extend negative energy out, I can also sort of bring it back into myself and draw more positive energy in instead.
Well, that also sounds a bit
Yeah.
selfish, though, right?
No,
everybody
that's
needs
all
positivity.
positive
Yeah, I mean,
energy that allows me to give more.
and that goes back to shadow work too, because like you're bringing that negative energy into light. And so when you bring that negative energy into light, you realize what you need to work on, and you change your way of thinking. You're bringing that out of the subconscious, because really and truthfully, a lot of what you do and what you think is subconscious. Like, yeah, like you can think like, oh, I'm gonna do this, do that. But as far as like your emotions, as far as what you do, like, and what you learn, that goes into your subconscious. That goes, like, it's like a computer. Like, you see, like, all these like, files and apps on, your phone. But when you go deeper and deeper into the programming, it's going into, like, the subconscious.
Well, we can just call it the soul, right? It
Exactly.
encompasses all parts of the soul, and it's able to impact all parts
Yeah,
of the soul.
it's like
So what do we either get or lose out of that? Is it harmful in intent by total loss, or are they learning a lesson at the end of it that we've constructed into being? And so their soul grows by negative or harmful energy. I think the real constructive use of black magic would be to teach somebody a lesson utilizing maybe a stark absence of positive energy that we've created, like a vacuum, right?
I would say that by creating a stark absence of negative energy, you get the other person to imagine. They attempt to fill in the space with their own devices. So now it's their projection of energy. They're projecting their energy into you, which is why you feel enlightened. Because people are paying attention and trying to find out where the negative space is. They're looking for it, and they'll eventually tell you where it is. And then you can adjust for that too.
Interesting. Yeah, I think so. I think there's some inherent connection there when you do a hex or a curse or whatever, and a lot of people like to think of it as immediate, like it's a harmful action, but I think there's much more going on than that.
It's more like a harsh lesson.
Well, and that's why I
There's an
say
exchange.
anybody who actually learns how to become a witch
putting a
has to-
virus into somebody's, like, software. Yeah.
They have to learn how to benefit or
The level of technique and skill necessary to become a witch is usually absent from the negative image of a witch that we have.
Yeah.
And so true for any other magic practicing archetype. We tend to label them as negative when we don't really have, when we do that, we don't have a good concept of what they are. So we try to abstract them.
I think a lot of that has to do with the idea that people fear what they do not understand.
yes, yeah, exactly. They don't get it, so they fear it. It's nothing but negative because they don't get it.
It's
a
almost
long
like-
human history of that.
Which is why, like, normal people aren't going to essentially understand us when we start talking about magic and stuff like that, which is why they, like we were talking about earlier, which is why they tell you not to go around and telling people to talk about magic, because it's only going to influence negative onto you, because people aren't going to understand you.
Well, yeah, you're exactly right.
People's connotations and preconceptions, I guess, about it or whatever.
There's a long history, I think, of preconceptions about certain imagery and symbols or stereotypes that people just don't understand, but they label as being negative. Like, for example, one of the classic examples is the inverted star. An inverted star is, most people will universally recognize it as being some sort of strange, evil thing without understanding what it is that a star is.
Yes, and if a person is behaving like a star, they're looking for the negative in them to start with. Because that's what they started by searching for. You've drawn the negative energy into yourself and they can't find it, so they're looking for it in you. But it's based on the presupposition that you are good. So they have faith that you are good, they're looking for the negative. And if they come to a point where they can't find it, then they're enlightened too.
There's some confirmation bias there, though, with that, right? And they're looking for it, and they might find it then, right?
Yes, but only if you can't persuade them otherwise. Like, if it's true, what they'll find is the truth.
Yeah.
In regardless, because you can't lie at that level.
You guys mind if I take a picture?
Truth seems to prevail in the very end, in the long run.
The
Truth is known in the long run, I mean.
Truth is,
I've never understood what that meant when someone says something
The
else.
body itself is a memory storing device. From your hormones to the signals that have built up stronger connections. So that's why we say the body resonates.
Like frequencies?
Yes, we can change resonance. An easy example would, whether you're dehydrated or hydrated, will significantly increase resonance and magnetic frequency. So
Wait, I kind of wanted to ask. I'm sorry that I just kind of
no, go ahead.
go back. But
Oh, I had
you
something
know
to
how
say.
people used to punish other people for doing magic?
Yes.
Why was it noticeable that they were doing magic if it was just a way of life that everyone already does in the first place?
So that's a very complicated question, because this has to do with a lot of the history of religion and how religion evolved over time. There's a lot of various theories on this. The pentagram, which is often associated with witchcraft and black magic, was actually a symbol that was on the Greek coins during the Age of Enlightenment. And the pentagram was actually facing up, not down. The whole thing had to deal with, it dealt a lot with like sacred geometry, the academies and everything that were going on at
Do
the time.
you know where the pentagram comes from?
I thought it came from not Plato's Academy, but Aristotle's. No, before that.
It's a long recognized symbol. Do you know why?
What's that?
Because it's in the sky.
It's also on us. We are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the sky. When
And
it's in
actually,
the sky.
Venus.
it's interesting that you bring that up. I was reading recently, you know the art by Da Vinci that is of the human with the square?
Yeah.
I was just
Did you guys know that the sacred geometry behind, or the whole reason that painting is like so important is because at the time there was a movement during the times of Romanticism where they were trying to figure out how to properly square a circle, which is where you take a circle and you make a perfect square with it. So they were trying to figure out how to square a circle, and Da Vinci found out that the human body squares the circle already, so he showed how to do this using the proportions of the human body. Well, in sacred geometry, the circle represents the soul, and the square represents the soul, the body that is.
I thought he.
She talking aliens though. Like,
What's that?
Part of childhood, right?
yeah, like didn't you like go into a cave?
That is
like
hearsay
disappeared for a while.
Oh, was that a traumatic childhood experience or a cool one?
Yeah, like I heard somewhere like he went to a cave and then like he was talking to
You're gonna get a
spirits.
lot of shit though.
Yeah,
like shadows on the wall or something.
I don't know. Like, he was talking to spirits or. Oh no, I was watching Ancient Aliens.
Hold on. If you're,
Oh,
are you
that's a
talking-
credible source.
If you're talking about shadows on the wall in a cave, you're talking about Plato's
Allegory.
at the library of the cave.
No, I was talking about like when he was younger and like I don't know, he went to a cave and like
Da Vinci?
Da Vinci, and like the story goes like he went to a cave and he came out like so much more wiser and like his physical appearance like was the same, but people perceived him as older or something. It was weird.
Anyways, going back to Venus,
Yeah.
the pentagram comes from the orbit of Venus.
Sorry.
Venus, as we look at it in its orbit from Earth, creates a 5-pointed star. So yes, so when you would put Venus in retrograde, it would, instead of going in a 5-pointed star, it would then go ahead and reverse and go in the opposite direction of creating a star. So
If, I thought that he had squared the circle by using a triangle, and that hexagram was just triangles. So,
it's a basic geographic shape too, but I think that's originally where humans had discovered it from, because it's always been there in the sky. If you follow Venus, there's a 5-pointed star from Venus's orbit.
observed it at some point from.
Yeah, well, we see early humans were very familiar with astrology, so I wouldn't find it hard to believe that some of the shapes and concepts we get about mathematics and the geometric shapes that exist were formed by
Well, the thing is like
natural occurrences of geometry in the sky.
The thing about sacred geometry and the thing about that is it's not just about the patterns that are in the sky that humans were seeing. These are just patterns in nature. Sacred
Exactly.
geometry, it's like at some point when the universe started, something started moving in a certain direction, and now we have the golden spiral, which is something that you see all throughout nature. You see it in seashells, or snail shells, like stuff like that. Like you see it all throughout nature, and it's just because like this is just coincidentally a pattern that happens throughout nature, just because it's a mathematical pattern.
Oh yeah, it's both microscopic and macroscopic. It exists throughout the realms of existence, no matter what.
So essentially, like sacred geometry is like I can take any shape of literally anything and just break it down into these very basic, simple shapes. Like I can't get anything simpler than a circle. And then if I want to break down the circle, like the shapes are associated to certain
Points and lines, yeah.
behind it. But like if I were to break down the circle and divide it, I think it's like divide it into
just get a point in the radius.
triangle. Then if you do it to the 4, you get your square, and it keeps going on and so on and so
Sure.
forth. And then
It's the nature of reality.
right, and then each operation that you do to the circle represents the whole or all that is. So each operation that you do on the circle
Is
is when
finite
I
to
divide the
finite.
circle by 2, I get duality. Right? When I divide the whole by 2, I get duality.
Yeah,
When I divide the whole by 3, I get the trinity. And it's talking about like how those concepts come from operating on the circle or the whole of everything.
Yeah, there are consistent tenets in reality. Bacteria replicates like that. You have 2 points, and the points replicate. Now you have 2 points instead of 1.
Yeah.
It reflects itself across all reality. So yeah, you can get the shapes in various different macroscopic forms, and look down and down and down, and then see the same shapes reflected on a microscopic level.
Right,
So
kind of
it's
like
not-
a solar system and an atom.
Yeah, this is.
It's not just happening, like, it's not just
things that are in objects that we see. Like these aren't just patterns and things that we see. These patterns happen in the energy around us as well. So
Oh, yeah, it's reality.
we're talking about Venus like creating these patterns and like how humans learned math from astrology. It wasn't necessarily just astrology where the math came from. It was the observation of that these patterns were happening, that we were seeing these patterns in the sky because our Earth was rotating in accordance with these patterns.
And then, of course, we ask ourselves why,
Yeah.
and that leads to these conclusions.
We can create in ourselves a hallucinogenic state where we choose to see things that other people can't see. And then we can also, through whatever mechanism we induce hallucination into ourselves, also induce hallucination into others. And then they will see it, and then they will believe, and then progressively it becomes real because we spread this sort of grabbing of an imaginary situation and quantum pull it through everybody's filters.
Becomes real.
Right,
Kind of like
Becomes
the
communicable.
concept of the deity.
Right. Well, because then it's objective, and we can share it, and it can travel faster, more people can see it.
Religion works this way.
Right. Now, the whole, or the unity consciousness, if there was no adversary, everything would be fine. We disagree because we have different points of view, but if we were just one with one point of view, there would be no problems. There would be no conflict or confrontation. So, in order, if it's perfect, and nothing can defeat it, the thing that can't, it's the perfect terror, the perfect terrible thing must happen. And that's why we invent the werewolf to be attacked by, or that's why we create, that's why.
That's probably
We invented a lot of really dark symbols to explain the world around us.
Because when the werewolf
Kind of like
comes
a
into
pentagram
your
or a
home,
werewolf
and you
or-
learn how to fight the werewolf and defeat it, that it
Or
realizes
serpent,
makes you a better
right.
human, or a better version of consciousness in general.
So basically, we're fighting our animalistic urges.
We are using our animalistic urges, negative energy, to adapt so that we have more
You
power.
know, there's an identifiable circuit deep in your neurology, like in the very center of your brain, where it's some of the oldest architecture, relating to snakes.
It's called
The reptilian brain or whatever?
Yeah, like the reptilian brain.
it's called the limbic system.
Yes,
And
thank you.
Emotion is stored in the top of the limbic system, what's called the thalamus and the hypothalamus, and there's a mediating layer of white tissue where the information travels up into the neocortex. That's how we make emotional associations to things that we think about, because all of our cognitive behavior is in the gray matter, and the emotions go into memories and thoughts. We have a visual area and a verbal area, and we actually, through our attention, choose which direction this energy is going to travel up to, and we use emotions to increase the amount of fat that follows these neural connections to make them more insulated and also travel faster. So we adapt our own neurology. We can consciously do this, and then when I start sending a really strong signal to a very specific part of my brain with a strong emotion, and I can convince people that it's true, and also that energy is traveling out of a specific region, and it's got a frequency that will tune to that region of everybody else's brain, which will travel down into their emotional center, but they have to be able to accept that, because their associations have to be wired so that you trigger the correct emotion in them in order for them to feel motivated to believe, otherwise they'll shut
So
it out.
it's basically a radio frequency.
Well, you're running a sort of like a circuit, and you're tuning others to running the same circuit. But if you're missing pieces to the circuit, it's not going to complete.
Right.
Well, I know that the way that we communicate is largely
Why
through
can't you make someone laugh at
micro-expressions.
this?
Can we identify the pieces of that circuit better?
Yeah, I think you just did, coming from the limbic system out into the gray matter. So it runs itself through a filter of the limbic system, which is like a sort of base core functionality going back and dropping down into like muscle memory. But the emotions are stored close to a sort of muscle memory, and then emotions are considered a part of us just as much as memory of how to ride your bike or anything else, and that we only shoot it up into the gray matter of the brain and our consciousness out of the filter that exists in us, which is why, you get mad and then you start making a confirmation bias to yourself about things that are agitating you.
Yeah.
This is all making me mad because you know that you're mad and now you're looking for things that are making you mad. It's the same sort of circuit that runs no matter what emotion you're in. You're just changing the spectrum.
Hold on. I have an interesting thought on this whole theory, right? We were talking earlier about how when you're trying to fool someone's perception, you don't want them to know you're trying to fool their perception. You don't want to tell them, I'm trying to make this can float before your eyes, because they're going to try to assume that's false, and that assumption stops you from being able to do that action.
Magic, yeah.
It's reminds me a little bit of hypnosis.
This can is going to float, as opposed to I'm going to try to make it look like it floats.
Well, even telling them that, they can still make the assumption, they're still going to try to say, oh yeah, there's no way that's going to happen, and in their minds, as they're thinking, that's what's stopping it from happening. But it's okay, what about a situation where we're all right now, let's say we wanted to make something on this table float before our eyes, and we all make ourselves agree that this thing is going to float before our eyes. But now we have a camera involved, and all the people later on watching this video who are going to see this, we're perceiving it to float right before us, but the people that are going to watch it later are just believing.
So we have to be able to believe beyond the disbelief of all of the potential audiences in order for it to work. So that's not impossible. It's just that when we get put to the test, we have to be able to make it believable, no matter who's asking us.
I will say, a great way to convince anyone of anything is to believe it yourself.
Right.
Because then you will, because we express through micro expressions, unconsciously. Holy shit, what's going on?
Are you okay with that?
What are you doing?
Okay.
He hit my jewel and started coughing.
Oh, they did.
Trying to get his jewel.
If somebody's angry and they're projecting their angry emotions out,
Yes.
they're looking for them, and they're going to find them in the person who looks like they're supposed to have negative emotions but doesn't. And then they're going to imagine that negative emotion very easily to that person, except that person is superior and is able to positively influence them in return.
Well, it depends on whoever's dominant there. It could be.
Yeah, well, it's
a
dominant
filter.
because the negative emotion is going into them.
The dominant one will win over.
And they're being able to receive it. And they receive it because they've already figured that problem out, which means that they can be a teacher. And the way that works is the attention flows into the other person, and it collides with all the areas where it thinks the problem should be, and it finds positive answers because the person is demonstrating positive answers to them.
You should, for sure.
I would say.
I was going to say something about
Yeah. Actually, what do you have to say, John?
Yeah,
Please.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to know how you guys felt about how, let's say, I'm being positive, towards you guys. How does that affect you guys? How should?
Well,
When you act more positive towards someone and you start giving someone more of what they want, which is, a meaningful connection with another person is definitely something people want. That person is going to give you their trust in return. And the more someone trusts you, not to sound manipulative, but someone's
with great power comes great responsibility. It can be used for evil.
It all starts with a trust fund.
Well, it's an evolutionary thing. You can see
For your own survival.
cats and dogs display the same things that we do. They have a natural attunement to trusting others and working together in a communicable fashion. And so they run those same circuits that, I benefit you, you benefit me. And if you look at animals, you go down the scale where everybody's an individual on a reptilian level, and even they will start to display some sort of communicability. And you can see communicability also in birds, where they have different but individual levels of associating as a community, as a species, and then you see it really adamantly in humans and dogs and cats, and that's why we all relate so fundamentally. Why do we have dogs and cats
Yeah, it's
around
the
us
primary
all
pets
the
that we
time?
tend to have.
Yeah.
Because they're running
Me
the
too.
same sort of vibration, if you want to call it, whatever, but the sort of community attunement. They're naturally predisposed to attune to
we've also,
a communicable circuit.
You've also arguably co-evolved with animals like that.
Oh, no question, yeah, because it was beneficial for everybody to work as a unit.
Man's best friend, right, for hundreds of thousands of years, probably.
Yeah, for sure. And by putting that out, putting that out there, what you said, positive emotions, people, unless they're, I don't know, we tend to be like quite empathetic creatures. Like what you're putting out there, people will usually transmit to people.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll feel it too.
That's exactly why I was asking.
Yeah, and I talked about this last week actually after the podcast films with all you guys. Yeah, and it's basically, yeah, it transmits kind of, we just kind of feel it. It's something you feel. Basically, those chemicals, I guess, go through your body. I don't really know exactly, but I find that it transmits the strongest through eye contact, though. That's like, to me, that's like a direct portal for feeling what someone else is feeling.
Yeah, no,
That's the direct way, but if there's no eye contact,
emotions to a basic symbol, as basic as you can, through art and expression, then yeah.
I just mean like social like sort of psychology, I guess. Like when you're in a room, for example, like right now.
It's its own realm, I feel like, in the brain, the idea that you started to evolve based on communicability with other individuals.
Yeah.
It definitely becomes its own center.
And on a scientific level, the way that those transmit, like purely scientific, it's micro-expressions. We subconsciously, unconsciously, we don't realize it, we don't see it, but our brain just kind of pick up on it. Micro-expressions, little expressions on the face, and we see it, but we're not aware of it, but we just naturally respond to it, and we feel it transmits, and it's really
because it's universal.
So good
It's very built
magicians are
into
able
us.
to control the micro expressions on their face in an attempt to make them give off less signals, and that causes people to look for signals in them. And I wanted to mention that I completely lost it, but our perception is fractalized. The reason that we see fractals when we're high in serotonin is because our ability to perceive, if we have a limited amount of surface area, but there could be potentially an infinite amount of information in there, then our perception tool has to be fractal in nature so that it can replicate correctly. So
Fractal in nature, what do you mean by that?
it meaning that we have to
I
be
know
able
what
to take
fractal is,
a
though.
finite space and divide it infinitely in order for this active perception.
When you go into that one part, like one section, it just keeps like.
So a great way to understand this is like number squares. You have 32, like let's say 32 by 32, and you have a bunch of numbers and numbers and numbers, right? So if you look at one square, you have one number in one square. But if you look at it as a row or a column, now you have 31 other possibilities with which to align it.
I think that the positive emotions that we feel is actually the absence of perceived negative emotions that aren't there.
So that would mean that's like our default statement.
Yes, and when we turn our attention to the negative energy and we divide it, we give it the opportunity to be surrounded by positive energy and change. So the reason that we invent negative thoughts and ideas is so that we can continue to perpetuate ourselves towards better positives. Because we take something that's already perfect, we invent the perfect terror to destroy it so that we can adapt ourselves. So the existence of negative energy implies the existence of greater positive energy, but we don't do it by generating positive energy and sending it out to people. It's actually the emergent state of the solved conscious state that we're following to find the edges of together.
This very much reminds me of natural selection, which I would find to be reasonable mirrored in the consciousness. Because you're looking at something and you know that the process is going to be that so far this organism has run these challenges, it's overcome these challenges in a sort of abstract way, and it's come around to a conclusion every single time. So in some sort of recognition, the consciousness or brain itself starts to recognize that no matter what comes up, it's going to be able to solve it.
So the specific reason why people who have negative emotions can communicate them to somebody who lacks that negative emotional space is, let's say something really stressful happens. That means that all of the energy storing axons in your central nervous system get excited at the same time, and they pulse energy upwards. So they go up through your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems, which are attached to all of your endocrine organs, which secrete hormones. And they check those hormones so they can be informed on the way up as to what the natural state of your body is and whether or not you should be afraid or whether you're emotionally adapted to this emergent situation. So when you send that energy back up, it patterns inside the brain in a way that communicates to other people. And if that energy goes towards somebody else and isn't reciprocated, then it means that energy can travel down, and then it can check their endocrine systems and their hormones, and it feeds back to inform the other person how to change. And the way that it does that is, as the signal comes back down, every time that it encounters a bad connection where it can't travel, it releases cortisol into that system to give a stress response in the body.
Cortisol is a stress
Dopamine.
hormone.
Yes.
So that when it finds the dopamine, when it's applied, it increases the myelinated sheath, which is the fatty sheath around axons that travel. So it increases the strength of that connection, and it means it changes the way that that person has emotionally mapped this experience into their mind, and then they understand now. So, dude.
I appreciate your innate understanding of the nervous system, because it really does translate well.
Yeah,
I think we all know inherently that this is true, the connection between organisms, and especially you would expect to see it with the communicability of dogs, cats, and human beings. That they all connect together as sort of a tribe or a pack or whatever, so you would expect them to evolve in that way. So I really appreciate your knowledge of the nervous system and the limbic system in the brain and how it connects. And I think those are fantastic observations.
Yes, and I think we're going to close it out soon. However, I'd like to end it on a relative throwaway question about another system. Why do guys draw dicks?
Finally, the question I was waiting for. That's a good question.
Right?
The moment was so
Sorry,
I was talking to Bliss about this because there was like this really well detailed dick just on one of these walls somewhere down by the river run, and like we were talking about it, and it's like she was like, why do you guys draw dicks? I was like, that's a really good question. Like, I think like straight guys draw dicks more than even gay guys do. Like,
you might be right.
It seems to be a developing thing where you recognize it and you wish to impose it upon the world.
Maybe it's just people though.
It definitely, like, on the surface level, it has something to do with the forbidden nature of it, right? Like, you know, it's something.
The psychology of it, it's like
It should always be covered.
It's not accepted, so it's funny.
But why don't we do that with vaginas or breasts?
It's because of the simplicity.
No, I don't.
The simplicity of the shape, you know.
Because men respect women.
Long curve, short curve.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that.
I don't think it's because of the simplicity, though. I think it's just because, like, women are seen more as something to, like, even naturally, we see women naturally from the beginning as something, like, of love. So it's not really funny, it's more serious. It's kind of...
Yeah, and there's a lot of naked women in art. You don't see naked men that often. Except in, like, Renaissance art.
Yeah, women are more taken seriously when it comes to love.
But like, it's never really the object of art.
A woman's nudity is taken more seriously than a guy's nudity, though.
Well, yeah,
women are much more sexualized.
They make like 5 times as much money than us. So it's not...
I feel like Joseph has something to say about this.
So,
Yes, he does.
men, when they finally come to an emotional, stable place with their penis,
I've been eating this all.
demonstrate to other people. So we're born with negative associations here. And we're trying to pattern out away the negative associations by practicing division until we see that there are emergent positive associations. And now our absence of negative association with this causes us to influence the world by saying this big picture in my brain isn't bad for this bathroom wall anymore. And I generate this as a negative image. And it draws other men to look at it and say, has he figured the thing out?
So he's got the answer.
So if you're gay and you haven't figured out what's going on yet, then you're afraid to draw this, and people will call you out for being afraid to draw the dick. You must be queer. So we create this way to signal to each other who has emotionally solved for the problem. This is interesting, is that if we ask them, are you gay, and they say, yes, I am, and I love you, and your dick picture is more beautiful than you think it is. We've suddenly found an answer that we weren't looking for.
I feel like it might, maybe it demonstrates a comfortability with your own sexuality.
Yeah.
Somebody who's more insecure about it might be afraid to grow a penis. Yeah.
Wait a second.
Wow, you're very comfortable with your sex.
I think the fact that we're laughing at it verifies it.
Hold on, this guy's having an epiphany over the dick thing. I want to hear this.
Okay, it's more than just the
It's
It's about the female genitalia too, right? If you see like some guy draw a penis, you're like, fuck.
it's a penis.
Like, oh my gosh, that's a nasty looking thing. You know, you're just like, it's funny, you know? Cause
No,
it's just
vaginas are just as nasty.
I know, but when you see,
Possibly, yeah.
like when you see
There's
like,
the blood factor.
Fucking egg pork sandwich sometimes, man.
well, it's like, I mean, males also draw titties, though.
Well, here's, okay, so.
I think the difference between the dick and female parts is that it requires a level of codependence and knowledgeability. When a human is born as one or the other, it doesn't have that prerequisite knowledge, and so it's not determined to develop along the same path as it would be being exposed to the other gender. It doesn't have to have that
Could you
knowledge.
imagine if, like, you like spray painted a vagina on a wall and then you forgot the clitoris, and then your friends made fun of you forever because they told you you couldn't find the clitoris? You forgot it existed.
Vagina views you.
I mean, like, maybe that also has to do with the fact that, like, a lot of, like, let's say a really attractive girl, right? It's just a really funny joke that, like, a guy would say sometimes, like, in a movie. We usually don't even, like, laugh about it as much as, like, let's say.
Yeah, we usually find men more funny than women.
And I think it's
Yeah,
because
there's a lot more
also
funny
that
male
perspective
comedians
we
than
have on
female.
women. You know, we have this kind of perspective
it's
that we
kind
give
of
it over time. Like a guy's like, my dick and balls. Everyone starts laughing, you know, like,
Yeah, guy walks up on stage. Oh, I just got my dick cut off.
Yeah.
Girl says I just got my clitoris decapitated.
my
You know.
clitoris, they're just like different uses of the cut word. My dick got cut off. My clitoris got decapitated.
Although the phrasing of that does make it kind of funny.
Yeah.
Well, I was laughing.
Yeah.
Been decapitated. If you look at what we do with male circumcision, and I mean, it's a significant operation to undergo, and it's not necessary.
It's genital mutilation.
So,
How many people here have sock dicks?
What is it? Wait, what?
You have a sock dick?
What is a sock dick?
Uncircumcised.
We're getting into really.
and here's why this is.
Hold on, let's hear what Joseph has to say about
We
this.
draw the dick that we know.
That's a really good
So, we draw the dick that we know.
You said soft.
Hold on, let's bring it. Yeah, let's bring it back to one conversation because this isn't audible at all.
Yeah, we draw the dick that we know, and we don't draw the dick that we don't know. So we will say sock dick because it's a way for us to say faggot and ask for clarification. Because if you did ask, and you were to watch the documentaries that are available on Netflix about this, then you would realize that it's a significant loss on your part not to be part of somebody who has a whole functioning body. So if you're not in that position, you may want to understand it better, but the way that we find that information is by generating this sort of vulgar approximation of what's going on in order that we can seek clarification of it. Because if it is actually true that this is insignificant, and we can all agree on that, then we just push it out until it's gone.
It's relatively insignificant, though.
I feel like you've really nailed on something. If you have an entire population that has genital mutilation inflicted on it at birth, how do we really know the effects of it versus everything else?
That's a
Like your
fantastic
wording.
question, because now we constantly have this misunderstanding why the signals that we're getting back from the world aren't matching what we expect our signals to be, because we've lost a massive amount of nerve tissue in the most sensitive acts that we perform as people. So we have this negative association or this poorly developed association during our developmental years where we start to make negative associations or any emotional associations about the things that we see and the way that we think about it. And it could change relationships on a wide spectrum for a lot of people.
Yes, I completely agree. The brain is patterned to develop with its nervous system intact. So when you remove a fundamental part of it, then the brain doesn't have the appropriate room to go out and come back and give a response.
That is very true.
So it grows more room for other pathways to advance for different parts.
That's a great
And they may be negative or they may be positive, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's like saying like when people like lose their ability to hear,
another sense, yeah.
True, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but shouldn't it also then be possible for that trait to develop in a naturally functioning body, and probably even more likely to develop positive traits in an already natural?
I would say that you're probably predisposed to negative tendencies with amputation of part of the body than you would be for natural growth by leaving it alone.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw this documentary about some guy who he went blind, and he started doing this thing where he'd go around and he'd make like this click with his tongue, where he'd just be like,
yeah,
and it'd give him like a sense of echolocation.
Oh man.
No, it's true. They can. They can sense shapes.
Yeah. So he developed this ability only because he lost his ability to see. So it's like your body is going to adapt to whenever you lose in some way, whether it's psychological or physiological change.
I think that
ultimately I think it's relatively arbitrary whether or not you're circumcised.
Yeah.
Well, listen, guys, we'll do a circumcision episode next time.
Right.
We actually.
I mean, if it's for the podcast, we can do one right now.
No, hang on, just real quick. Can I?
We already actually. We've gone over 10 minutes.
Just chop the whole thing off.
Oh, yeah, John has to just.
We'll do circumcised episode. There we go.
Let's go to wrap it up, guys. Let's go to wrap it up.
Johnny has. So you said something about decapitation. What is the definition of decapitation?
Yeah, it means your head. I mean,
So if you cut the head of your dick off, can you decapitate your own penis?
Yeah, for sure.
Dick decapitation.
Yeah, for sure.
That sounds like a really weird
Death metal
method.
band.
Yeah, well, there's already cattle decapitation. I know, I'm aware of that one. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just I was thinking about that. I thought it was kind of funny.
You can decapitate whatever you want.
As long as it's the head. So
Just gotta put it in correct perspective.
this room. Will we be talking about this?
Yeah, I feel like this is a pretty reasonable.
That's a
Butterfly effect.
It's a large cultural issue, so it's worth being discussed and not ignored.
That's true.
We're the only major country in the world that exercises this.
Yes.
I disagree with that position personally.
Yeah, I do. I think everybody really does at this point. With enough knowledge, you would say, okay, well, my genitals were mutilated at birth. Is that really necessary?
Yeah, I mean,
what you're doing is translating sensitivity for hygiene, and like it's easier to wash an uncircumcised dick than it is to wash a circumcised.
Yeah,
dick.
it's not that hard.
Other way
It's not
around.
that hard, man.
It's harder to wash. It's really not that hard.
I don't think there's any hygienic argument in the modern world anymore.
Yeah, right.
No medical organization in the world suggests circumcision because the risk of it, and even SIDS is starting to be associated with circumcision, which is like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Should we just start
when you amputate a fundamental part of the human body, and then you say, okay, well, is the rate of death going to be higher? The answer is going to be yes. Of course there is. If you're So SIDS is funny because they've started to correlate, and it's very serious. But SIDS is higher in the Americas versus other countries, which is very strange because we have a regular, medical system.
We all have appendixes, but we don't go around removing them just because they can cause problems, right?
Also, we don't just
appendicitis.
What about all the other areas of our body that might be difficult to clean? Should we just start removing those, or mutilating them in some way?
Totally.
Well, it's like
Yeah, for sure. Let's just cut off our ears, man. Who cares about getting behind them?
Yeah, dude. Honestly, right? Like with that logic, it's quite absurd.
We just talk.
Really? It really is.
But it's a double standard.
It makes sense when people were wandering around the desert, it became a real issue.
I can tell we're all very passionate about this issue. After the show, let's go and beat up some circumcision doctors. Hurry on.
Beat up the circumcision.
Fucking beat them up for cutting up all those baby dicks.
Yeah.
And on that note,
make them choke.
Yeah, we should. Let's do our. Yeah, let's wrap this up. You guys have anything to say before we close it out?
Closing statements.
I think Steven's asleep.
Yeah. No, he's just resting.
Any closing statements at all? Otherwise, we're gonna wrap it up.
All right, guys. We could go on this forever, truly.
All right, so this has been our pre-Halloween episode for some reason on hidden knowledge of the modern times. We go ahead and hit subscribe if you liked this video.
Yeah, right
that's
below.
a thing apparently. And,
like, share, and subscribe, guys.
yeah, like, share, and subscribe if you like this video, and we'll be bound to do something different next
Make
week.
sure you smash that like button.
Make sure you take a look at it. We'll see you next time. This has been Hidden Knowledge of the Modern Times.
Modern times.
Modern times.
Oh yeah. No, not the prehistoric
Full of hidden
times.
knowledge, man.
Future time.
Make sure you separate the geographical periods.
All right, guys.
Knowledge of the future now.
Although I guess in 200 years, this really would